numbers on the screen, plus 233 0200 515253, plus 233 200 515253. You can WhatsApp your question and it will be read out through the telephone number on your screens. Please, your name, either your campus or your assembly, and then your question.
My name is Melody Yaira Dachmo. I'm from IFE.
All right, Melody.
Please, my question is, if you sleep too much, what will happen?
Very good question.
Thank you, Melody.
That. Now, so sleeping too much is what we call technically as hypersomnia. So insomnia is the inability to sleep. Hypersomnia is oversleeping. So the interesting thing about sleeping too much is that it tells your brain. Now, human beings have what you call a biological clock. We technically call it your circadian rhythm, okay? Now, your biological clock is something that you program. So that for some of us, every morning, the moment you wake up, you have to use the loo. That's your biological clock. It's been programmed so that your body starts to respond in that light. Now, when you oversleep consistently, not once in a while, and one of the reasons why you might be oversleeping is that you owe sleep. If you owe sleep, you oversleep at some point because sleep will take it has to take its portion. If you oversleep, you reduce the ability of the brain to first be exposed to natural light. And natural light allows the brain to become positive, or it allows the brain to become productive. There are many people who get what we call a depression simply because they don't have contact with the outside world. A depression simply because they don't see light. And the treatment we use for them is bright light. Isn't that interesting? That we can treat disorders using bright light only. So you need the sleep to ensure that your biological clock is not tampered with. It is not confused. If you are haphazardly sleeping, today you sleep more, tomorrow your biological clock gets strict. And once it does that, all the systems in the body, all the cycles that you need are interfered with. And that's why sleeping too much is not a great thing.
Thank you very much. Let's have the gentleman in the middle. Oh, okay. All right, go ahead. Your name?
My name is Samuel.
Your question.
I'm from Legon. It's a bit unrelated, but I was just curious to know, what are some of the tells of an anxiety disorder?
It is very related. Of course, it's mental.
Very, very related.
Okay. Thank you so much. So anxiety is usually has an underpinning of fear, okay? Now, like the body, the brain, or let me put it this way, the brain is not able to communicate directly to us that it is suffering, okay? The body, however, does that very easily. So the moment you feel sick, you're running a temperature or you are feeling some pain. And that is the brain saying, do something about what you are feeling or you are weak. Now, the brain, on the other hand, cannot tell us when it is struggling. So what it does is that it compiles the struggles to a point and starts to show it just like the body would. In anxiety, a lot of people feel that they have palpitations or they feel their heart beating very vigorously. And when that happens, they say to themselves, am I about to suffer a heart attack? Today, I want to change that dynamic. Your heart beating is telling you that you are in some form of danger. We have been made so that whenever we face a danger, whether it's imagined or real, we react to it physically. So when you are thinking about school fees and your heart is beating, it is because your brain pictures it to be real. It pictures it to be something like a lion chasing you. And your heart beating is pumping blood into your major muscles to firm them up and allow you to run or to make you what? Fight that lion. However, in many instances, we have that activation and we don't do anything with it because it is only imagined. In anxiety, people get palpitations. You see that somebody is sweating even though the room is very cold. They have this deep sense of something bad is going to happen. There's a doom that is coming. Now, it can get extreme to the point that people start to have physical symptoms. So there are headaches, there are chest pains, there are back pains, and for lots of people, because they cannot explain it, they'll be going to the hospital, and the doctor will do every test and say, there's nothing wrong with you. You are fine. Then they say, no. That means somebody is what? Doing you. I like the expression. So it says somebody is doing you. Actually, it's anxiety that is doing you. Anxiety basically takes all your systems out of balance. Did you know that anytime you get into an anxious situation or any worrisome situation, one of the things that happens in the background is your body's soldiers, we call your immune system, it goes off. And that's why for lots of people, when you write an exam and you finish, you start to get cold, cough, infections, malaria. Because during exams are highly stressful situations for most of us. So your immune system is suppressed in that space. For some people also, the anxiety can become so real that they need an avenue to let it out. So they tend to dissociate. So I was happy with Mama Rita's verse about cutting. You know, when people cut themselves in mental health, what they are doing is they are trying to bring themselves to the present, because the emotional pain they feel is more than the physical pain. Anytime you cut yourself wondering, pinch yourself small, you come back to us. And so sometimes that's what happens also in anxiety. Now, there are many different kinds of anxiety-related disorders. You have that anxiety that has to do with performance. So it's difficult for you to stand in front of people. It's difficult, even if you are writing and you feel somebody is looking at you, you start to fumble. You cannot eat in public because you think that you're under the scrutiny of other people. That is one of the anxiety issues we call social anxiety disorder. Now, you have people also who have a fear, or they've developed an anxiety because something bad happened to them in the past. And their memory has consolidated it so much, every now and then it seeps back into consciousness and it causes the body to react. So anxiety is essentially fear. Anything that causes a sense of discomfort, which has a trigger, is usually related to anxiety. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please, anytime I'm doing a Momo transaction and I see the e-levy amount, my heart starts to beat. Is that financial disorder?
No, that one, you call it situational anxiety.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a question from online. We have a lot of people here who would come to you. Please keep your questions coming through. +233 200 This is the Family Life series with Mama Rita and Dr. Seth, our resource person at the Movers and Shakers Conference. If every romantic relationship encounters challenges to the extent of affecting everything about me, listening to you, I realized I need to preserve my mental health. Why, Dr. Seth, should I consider the gentleman who is asking for a romantic relationship now?
Let me tell you something interesting about romantic relationships. Many of us make a certain mistake. You know what the mistake is? We overextend. See, when you start a relationship, it becomes sweet. And then now your brain starts to fear losing it. Okay? So what you tend to do is that you stand around to ensure that it works. And in the process, you lose you. If you displease yourself consistently to please another, it becomes a stressor in your mind. If you are with somebody and they are always telling you, let's break up, let me give you a different dimension. You may think that you are the one losing. But if you think of all that you bring to that relationship, if you love the person so much to be crying because they will leave you, if they leave, whose loss is it? Whose loss is it? It's their loss. So it is all about the way you think about it. Now, I say before you get into a relationship, you must know your worth.
Know your worth.
If you do not know your worth, somebody will tell you your worth. And then they'll push you to act in ways that makes it unnatural for you. And that becomes stressful. The fact that somebody has hurt you doesn't mean there are other people who might not undo that job. So it is not something I say, oh, because it didn't work, don't try again. Resilience. Challenges are made to build us.
Thank you very much. Let's have our sister. Please, your name, location, question.
My name is Sonia. I'm from Ahimfi. So I have two questions for you. What's the difference between oxytocin and dopamine? And then the second question is, how does childhood trauma affect our attachment styles? I asked because I recently came across the attachment styles and how it affects relationships. You have people who are exuberant, they are extravagant at the very early stages of their relationship. The moment it starts getting serious, and then they begin to draw away. Okay. I want to know, how does childhood trauma affect attachment styles?
Two very powerful questions.
Thank you.
So, dopamine and oxytocin. Now, the thing about both dopamine and oxytocin is that they make you feel good. That is the reality. However, excess dopamine can make you seem mad. In fact, for people that hallucinate, like they are seeing things that other people cannot see, or they are hearing voices, or they are having tactile hallucinations, like things are crawling over them. When we do our investigation, we realize that it is dopamine. That is it. Now, lots of people confuse happiness with pleasure. So, if I get your question very well, dopamine gives pleasure, and that is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical within the brain. But there's another chemical you call serotonin, and that is what gives happiness. Happiness is ethereal. It is there. Pleasure is short-lived. When people smoke marijuana, it only increases the amount of dopamine in their brain and causes them to feel a certain high. And then when the dopamine goes away, then there's a problem. So in every addiction, we say that your dopamine centers have been hijacked. Oxytocin, on the other hand, is a feel-good hormone. So one is a neurotransmitter and the other is a hormone. But they do essentially the same thing, except we want more serotonin than dopamine because it is short-lived and it causes pleasure rather than happiness. Second question about trauma. Now, when we talk about trauma, it is any activity that your brain has kept locked in its subconscious mind because it holds some value or because it is too painful to forget. So, for instance, if you go through a traumatic relationship, maybe you have an abusive partner, friend, whatsoever, okay? And that's something that happened to you in the past, especially in children. The brain tries to deal with it on its own. And the best way it knows how to do that is to take it out of awareness. So it pushes it into what you call your subconscious mind. You see, as we sit here, we are using our conscious mind. The conscious mind has rules that tells us you can do this, you cannot do this. Your subconscious mind, on the other hand, is a warehouse, it's a reservoir of all the experiences you've ever been through. And in that place, there are no rules. If you dream, what you are dreaming about is usually coming from your subconscious mind. So for us mental health professionals, we say you cannot dream about anything you have never experienced. If you dream about something, you have heard about it before. You have seen it in a movie. Somebody has talked about it, and your imagination does what? Brings it to light. When things are hidden in your subconscious mind, they always find a way to manifest. So I've worked with many people who've had some form of sexual abuse in the past. And one of them, which was very hard to work with, this was a lady who was raped when she was 6 years. And she went through life because the brain had repressed the memory, believing she had never engaged in any form of sexual intercourse. So she got married. And on the night of her wedding, she stabbed the husband. Because those memories of what happened with the ordeal suddenly came to what? Manifestation. And that's what trauma is. Now, many traumas give us a negative view of the world. And that's why attachment becomes an issue. Human beings want to feel safe. And we get our sense of safety in our ability to control our environment. So anything that takes control away from you takes your safety as well. Whenever I think about falling in love, and I think about I will lose my control for the other person, it scares me so much, I will sabotage the relationship myself. For those of you who are married, about 2 to 3 weeks before you actually got married, there were plenty fights. True or false?
Very true.
True or false? Do you know why you were fighting? Your mind suddenly told you that, hey, so after this day, I cannot hang with the boys again. I cannot, all those imaginations. So in order to feel safe, you decided, let me tempt my partner. Let me torment them. If they give me a reason to stay, then they are somebody that I keep. And these are all very subconscious things that happen without us actually noticing.
Thank you very much. Put your hands together for Dr. Seth. Before we come to Our Lady in Green, let's take some complimentary messages from our online viewers. This one is coming from Sierra Leone. Says, Dr. Seth, your presentation has just answered questions about my life. Movers and Shakers Conference, we are following you live. This one says from Maryland, Mama Rita, thank you for doing great works. May the God of Apostle General bless you. Keep your questions coming in. We have a lot of them. Put your hands together if you are doing that. Our dear sister in green, your name, location, your question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Anne-Marie from Central University, and I had wanted to ask what your views on medication are, because I've also had like my fair share of mental health issues. A few years back, I was diagnosed with a lot of stuff and I was put on medication, but it gradually got better. So I actually took the decision myself to stop. But with every episode I have, it kind of just gets worse. And now I've been put back on medication. And I feel like for the long term, it's actually doing more harm than good.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. So I think what she's asking about, she says, what is my view on medication? Now, I'll tell you something about mental health. The medications we use are called psychoactive substances because they impact the brain directly. If you are put on any medication, we have, let's say, 10 different medications for one thing. Everybody has a different biochemistry, or you have a way that you accept things or not accept it, okay? The initial phases of taking any medication can be confusing because it can show many different side effects. Contrary to what people say, when you are taking their medicine, you take it forever. It is not true. It only depends if it is absolutely necessary. The best treatments are usually a combination between talk therapy and the medication. To take yourself off the medication in a snap like this only causes it to get worse. These medications are high potency, so even if they have to take you off, they have to taper it down. So you start with 10, they come to 5, they come to 2, they come to 1, before you finally go off it. And I give you an analogy. If you work out a lot, and then because you are working out and you are metabolizing more, you tend to eat more, okay? If you stop working out, will you stop eating at once? You keep on consuming as much as you used to consume, and it takes time for your body to what? To readjust. So medications, if you have the right review. Now, in our part of the world, another thing that seems to be a challenge is when people are giving psychoactive substances or medication from mental health professionals, they look at it like the physical health. So you see, in malaria, you take 3 pills, that is it. Anytime you feel it, you go back for it. In our field, it doesn't work that way. You don't take it when it happens. There's a process of it dosing your brain before it works. So, a review is so important when you are on any of our medication. Ensure that you meet your mental health professional who prescribed it if you notice that there's any challenge that you're experiencing. And consistency is usually the key. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're on social media, kindly use the hashtag AskMamaRita, hashtag AskMamarita, and we'll be able to fish out your questions from every platform, on IG, on Facebook, on YouTube. The question: good morning, Dr. Seth. I would like to ask why I fear being alone or idle. I always have to keep myself occupied with work or other activities. The moment I'm alone with my thoughts, I start to overthink and I enter deep depression. I don't understand why I'm not comfortable in myself. I find myself being extremely depressed, especially during the weekends and holidays when I am off work, and I find it difficult to stay without occupying self. I feel a deep sense of emptiness within. I just cannot be alone. Please, what do I do?
You can be alone. Your thoughts are telling you one thing. And I have noticed that in what you describe, this person uses work as a coping mechanism. Now, during COVID, there was an interesting phenomenon. When the lockdown came to Ghana, we had more instances of domestic abuse being reported to the clinic. And you know what that taught us? That a lot of people were using their work to cope with their problems. So they were avoiding confrontation. But lockdown said you all stay in the house. And once they all stayed in the house, the battlefield was what? Was created. Sometimes there are many maladaptive steps that we take that become problematic for us. And that has to do with the way that you cope with your challenges. If you have a genuine feeling of loneliness, it's important to ask the question, is it a feeling or is it a fact? If, for example, someone says, I'm sitting here, but I feel lonely, that is factual. And that for us is something that has to do with a chemical imbalance. I think this is somebody we'd like to speak to later to help them navigate this particular challenge.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, please, can we have your name, location? Sorry, sir.
Go to church, join the choir. Thank you,
General.
Apostle General.
Put your hands together for Apostle General.
Yeah.
His recommendation is get busy, go to church over the weekends, join the choir, join the mighty men. You get the hormone called abayadoism. Yeah. Prayer. Can we have you?
My name is Sims Buambunsim from Kumasi Pankono.
All right, sir.
I greet you, Daddy Roberts and Mama Yvonne. My question is that what of some of us that you can only have an effective study in the night, and regardless to the time I sleep, I still wake at 4 a.m. Am I dying or not so that I can stop studying? Yes.
Of course, you are alive. All right.
So this is a good question. Now, also remember that when
Thank
it
you.
comes to sleep architecture, okay, you will not feel the effect of what you are doing now, especially when you are younger. It accumulates, and that's where the problem is. Now, there is something in the brain. You see, like every machine has an outlet, okay? So your car has an outlet to bring things out, okay? The brain also has an outlet. Every time you go through the day, the brain wears out. And as it wears out, there's a byproduct that's created. We call them beta amyloids, okay? It is only during sleep that the beta amyloids are cleared from your brain. The biggest challenge for lots of people who are suffering from Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's is beta amyloids. So they build over time. The recommendation would be to say, if you say you only study in the night, you have come to that place because you have conditioned your mind to do so. Are you saying that if you study in the day, it will never work?
I can't study during the daytime.
Okay, I'm throwing a challenge to you to say you can. You have just been conditioned to a place where it's the most comfortable thing to do. Remember I talked about change. Yeah. Every time you perceive change, your brain does not absorb any better in the night, maybe because of external things like noise and all those kinds of things. But generally, your brain should be able to absorb regardless of whether it's day or night. You have conditioned yourself to this place. But what I'm trying to explain is you need your sleep in that quantity to function optimally forever. You can do this in the short term. It is just like how somebody has a heartbreak and then they say, oh, let me drink small alcohol. It does the job in the interim because you might forget, but after 1 hour it wears out. So you need more alcohol and that becomes worse off. Great.
Thank you very much. Can we have...
Please, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yes, so I share the same
Your
room
name,
with-
please, location.
My name is Clara MacArthur from Ewutubreko Assembly.
Great.
Yeah, I share the same room with my sister. And then one night I had a dream and I narrated it to her the next morning. And she told me that was I listening to her conversation in the middle of the night because she had a conversation on a call. And I was very confused. And this is not the first time something like that has happened. I also remember way back in school, my roommate snores a lot. And I had a dream that someone was snoring and I was praying for the person to get healed. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized she was snoring. So I want to ask if it's a mental disorder or like a psychic gift.
Not at all.
But before that, some people say we need you at Papa Shiloh. There are some people who snore a lot. We need you to go and pray for them.
So it's neither a disorder, and I wouldn't call it a gift either. But I'm only speaking from a purely scientific point of view. Now, let me tell you something interesting. We do a process where we call hypnosis. In hypnosis, we work into somebody's subconscious mind to bring out the things that worry them the most, but they do not want to think about, okay? And it is a very simple process. All you do in hypnosis is you talk to somebody in monotones. Now, on the surface, you might not see, but your brain works in waves. So usually when you are going to bed, the waves that are created in your brain are like this. If I were to be talking to you before you went to sleep, and I was speaking like, hey, how are you? How was the day? I start to synchronize my voice to your brain wave. So you will fall asleep. But once you fall asleep, I am in your subconscious mind. So I will start asking you questions. And because there are no rules there, you answer all correct for me. I remember in senior high school, so some people were talking about Wesley girls here. We don't see them. We don't see them. There's only one school, and the rest, St. Augustine's. That's all. I leave it there.
It's okay. He's holding a microphone.
I'm holding a mic. Thank you. That's
Dr.
all.
Prince, we know Dogono, you are also there.
So I remember then, your friend will be just about to fall asleep, and you'll be chatting with them. Then they fall asleep, and you say, Charlie, where the chopbox key day? That one was part of the process. They gave you the key, so you eat from it. So you are more likely to dream about something if you were thinking about it before you went to bed. If you watch a movie, a horror movie, you are more likely to have a dream in that regard. If your friend was having a conversation, subconsciously, it was in your brain. So it is a very normal and usual phenomenon, nothing to be worried about.
Thank you. Jessica, can we have you?
I'm Jessica from Ahimfie. And you see, as people, we have individual temperaments. We have introverts and extroverts. And in one of your examples of people with mental health, you said disassociating yourself and not wanting to join people and stuff. And my cousin is a very introverted person. So with this, how do you differentiate between people who are actually introverts from people suffering from mental health?
Excellent question, and I'll answer it very simply for you. Now, when you talk about temperaments are inborn. We are born with temperaments, okay? So you might be born with a particular temperament that makes you somebody who can engage more, or a temperament that makes you less engaging. However, your temperament will always react with your environment to form your personality. So we normally look at personality after 18 years. Now, if your temperament is somebody who is to themselves, but you grow up in an environment where everybody is, wow, you will learn to be able to adjust. Your brain will adapt. The brain is the most adaptable organ in the world. So there is nothing to say that because I have this one, this is who I am. You can change. And it is all about a thriving environment that allows that to work. Guess what? If you have a temperament where you are to yourself, and you have a family that consistently tells you, don't go here, don't play with people, it will null that temperament and make it so powerful that you may never be able to engage or associate with people. But your temperament can change based on the environment. So it is not a once this is the temperament, this is who I am. Sometimes people also say that some temperaments are better than the other. It's not true. Depending on the situation in which you are, some temperaments may be better than another. Let's take, for example, the melancholic temperament. We've heard about them, right?
Yeah.
They are very perfectionist in nature. If a melancholic works in maybe an accounting firm, they are going to excel because of their natural trait. But if they have to work in a place where they have to deal with people, it might be difficult for them. So every temperament has an advantage and a disadvantage, but it is based on the context. Thankfully, we can modify our temperaments by learning bits and pieces of things. And some of these are very unconscious. They are about 80% unconscious, 20% conscious. Thank you.
Lots of questions coming in. Hi, Mama Rita. I am Bright, Rosa, University of Health and Allied Sciences. Please, as a believer who is working to sustain an intimate relationship with the Holy Spirit, the feeling of emptiness and loneliness I often have in my closet when I take a break from this relationship with the Spirit, it often gets me down and worried for long. Please, is this a mental health condition?
It depends on the extent or the severity. If they are saying that it's so, let me put it this way. If it's emotionally draining on them, then it's important for us to talk about. Remember I mentioned that the way you think about things, and equally the kinds of things you say to yourself, can have very significant impacts on you. So when people say things about affirmations are real. They are true. If you tell yourself something about you and you believe in it, it manifests. It will actually manifest. So if you keep on labeling yourself as I'm not attractive, you start to believe these things, not because they are real. And once you start to believe it, you act in ways. Now, if you don't feel attractive, will you go out? So who will now tell you that you're attractive? That's the way these things work. I remember working with a lady who had said they feel they are useless. And this is a person who had a master's degree at the time. He said, I'm useless. Life is meaningless. So I started by asking them, so which schools did you attend? And these were top schools they mentioned. I said, are you sure that the exam you wrote it by yourself? Say, no, I wrote it and I got 10 ones. I said, you did not copy? Say, no. And then what happened? Then I went to this school. I said, you didn't pay bribe? He said, no. We went on and on. By the time we got to her master's, she just said, I'm actually better than I think of myself. And that was the end of it. Sometimes it's just awareness, coming to the awareness. Okay, good.
All right, our dear sister in pink.
My name is
Okay, hold on.
Please, nobody should join the queue anymore and then listen to somebody else's question. If the question has been answered, just go out of it. And those online, we have over 35 questions online. What we are going to do is, in the weeks to come, Dr. Seth will be with me on Family Life with Mama Rita. We will do Ask Mama Rita and answer all the questions. A lot of the questions are on sleep. I mentioned just this Wednesday that I'm bringing Dr. Seth to do sleep disorder. Yeah. He was with Royal Ladies 2 weeks ago and it was so good, sleep disorder. So anybody that has a question on sleep, Dr. Seth will actually be in the studio with me in the coming weeks to handle sleep disorder. So those of you who are not part of Family Life with Mama Rita every Wednesday, please come on and then we will answer all your questions.
Juliana is my name. I'm from Trinity Temple, Takrade. I just want to know a child who is very quiet, but when you give a toy or something to play with, the child will spoil it just like that. What is it, a mental health?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's have the next gentleman. Please go ahead.
Please, chance you from Nungwa branch, and then please in relation with studying before sleep. And then please, I wanted to know that some of our students, after like our classes, our lessons, our brain gets tired. So is it like advisable to sleep before you study, or you study before you sleep?
Okay, thank you. But I think this question was answered. Please, can we have you?
Good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Sin here. I'm from Covenant Temple to Newtown. Please, I have a question. 3 in a row, please. I want to ask, how can you get rid of childhood unpleasant memories? And number 2, what could be the cause of excessive crying? And thirdly, please, I'm coming.
All right, thank you. Once you get that.
What could, could talking to oneself be a form of mental disorder? Because I talk to myself a lot.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have your question?
Estelle Quay, East London Mission. I'd just like to find out what some symptoms of stress could be.
Thank you very much. Finally.
I'm Elizabeth and I'm from Tama East Harvest Temple. I want to ask if your environment has negative effects on your mental health disorder.
Thank you very much. So I will start from a child destroying a toy. A child has to destroy a toy. A child has to do that. That is what children do. And it comes from the fact that children are naturally curious. Okay? Let's be careful not to think that they are destroying the toy because they want to destroy it. When I was younger, every motorized toy my parents bought for me, I had to re-engineer it by breaking it because I wanted to see why it works the way it does. If you are saying that perhaps the child doesn't want to engage, but if they are engaging but destroying it, it is very normal when it comes to development. It's nothing that we want to be worried about. However, in children and their challenges, you want to look at a number of things before you can make any judgment on whether it is unusual or it falls outside the scope. About the sleep issue, the way I understand it is, if you are talking about nap time during the day or siesta, which we used to have in school and most of us never liked, they are good because naturally, you may notice that around 2 o'clock during the afternoon, you feel sleepy. How many of us feel that way? And then you say it is the food. It's not the food. It is your body's circadian rhythm. It's your biological clock. It hits its daily low at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's what it does. So when the thieves are coming, they come at 2 a.m. because they know that sleep is potent.
It's sweet.
Now, siestas or naps are good if they don't exceed 30 minutes. If you want to take a nap during the day, once it exceeds 30 minutes, it loses its value. These are what you call power naps. And power naps, once you wake up from a power nap, you feel more invigorated as you move on. So she talks about why people...
Getting rid of childhood unpleasant memories.
Well, in many instances, these memories are kept in your subconscious mind. The only way to deal with them is to bring them out. And so we have what we call talk therapy, where you talk about these memories for them to come into your active awareness and then you process. Then it talks about crying spells.
Excessive crying.
Well, excessive crying spells are just a sign to say that people are going through emotional pain. And sometimes they don't have to go through any physical pain for it to be triggered. You can see someone and ask them, how are you doing? And they break down and cry. Because the people that are in the environment who they expect to do that for them, they don't do. Then you talk about talking to yourself. Now, there is something we call active hallucination. In active hallucination, people are responding to something that nobody else can see. If it is that kind of talking to yourself, it's usually in the lines of a disorder. But if it is talking to yourself as a form of reaffirmation and comforting yourself and all of that, which is positive self-talk, we have no challenge with that. So someone asks about
symptoms of
stress. Now, the symptoms of stress will normally show in 4 dimensions. They show physically, okay, so in the body. They also show cognitively in the way that you think. They show emotionally in the way you feel. And they also show in behaviors. And I'll just take one of them. Excessive stress can cause you to have consistent headaches. It can cause you to have appetite issues. When you eat, It's almost like it's still stuck in your throat. It can cause you to feel pains in your body that you cannot explain. That's the physical. In the cognitive sense, it can cause you to become extremely forgetful. So if you ever had that experience where maybe you sat in your car, you remember sitting in the car, then you got to your destination. You don't remember what happened during the journey, but you're at your destination. That's a sign of stress. It could also be in the form of becoming very difficult for you to concentrate or to pay attention. Now, emotionally normally deals with your feelings. So when people are stressed, most people are on the edge. The least thing, they get upset. You say good morning, and then they say, why are you shouting? They cannot hear the good morning. All they hear is, why are you shouting? It can cause people to break down and cry. And then the last one is the behavioral aspect. So when people are going through stress, they try on their own to manage the stress. And that's what you will normally see. So then people get they might start increasing their use of maybe drug, alcohol, or engaging in social media even more because they want to feel a sense of calm. So they're on YouTube for 900 hours every day. In the same light, it could also be that in their behaviors, they become extremely argumentative. So there are many dimensions in which it takes. But remember that it affects your brain, your emotions, your thoughts, your emotions. The way that you react is usually the way that you feel stress. I think
Our background and environment, do they have effect on mental health?
they do very much. We say there are environments that are thriving and there are environments that are not thriving. If you live even in an environment where it is so noisy, it can have an impact on the way the brain structure develops. If it is too noisy, so everyday noise. In the same way, if you live in an environment which is always hot, heat, for your information, affects your sleep. The best way to sleep is to make sure your temperature reaches at least 18. And it naturally puts or invokes your ability to sleep. If you live in an environment where there are people consistently fighting, it affects you. So we are noticing how lots of children are taking an impact because their parents are having challenges. May that never be our portion. Okay. Thank you.
What are we saying to Dr. Seth? What are we saying to Dr. Seth? What are we saying to him? Dr. Seth, on behalf of the Apostle General, I want to say a very big thank you. Sorry for making you fearful yesterday night. We'll be closing in a jiffy. So three solutions to mental health. 3 solutions. The first is behavioral. Number 1, free. Diet, sleep, exercise. Diet, sleep, exercise, free of charge. Number 2 is medical. Medical is when you go through therapy, you take medications. When we are done, you can see Dr. Seth and book an appointment. And that one is not free. Either you are seeing him in his office, you are seeing him at Kolebu Teaching Hospital or medical school, or by telephone. You can see him right after here. Please don't go and ask questions. All the questions will be handled through family life. Are we okay? So he can decide to give you his telephone number.
On LinkedIn is Seth Mausi Asafo. On Instagram is Seto GH. That's all. Very simple. Seto, that is the name I prefer.
So, shall we give a clap offering to Seto? So you can book an appointment online. And then the last solution is medical. Is spiritual. The last is spiritual. Number 1, prayer. Number 1, prayer and deliverance. And in Royal House Chapel is a praying church. We also give the opportunity for people to go through deliverance. And then number 2, and the spiritual. Whilst we are here, Dr. Seth said it, you are going through high mental health function. The idea that you are socializing, the idea that you are dancing, the idea that you are going through praises, the idea that you are worshiping God, the idea that you are listening to the word, everything here is towards your mental health. And then I would read a scripture and tell you about the very last. Matthew chapter 12, verses 43. Matthew chapter 12, verses 43 to 45. I know we don't have that version, but in case we do, AMPC, Classic Amplified. And it reads, but when the unclean spirit has gone out of a man, it roams through dry places in search of rest, but it does not find any. Then it says, I will go back to the house from which I came out. And when it arrives, it finds the place unoccupied, swept, put in order, and decorated. Then he goes and brings with it 7 other spirits, more wicked than itself. And they go in and make their home there. And the last condition of that man becomes worse than the first. So also shall it be with this wicked generation. So you see, when it comes to spiritual, Dr. said them to do their medical one. We as a church, we will do the spiritual. The Bible says that when the spirit goes out, this time, let me not use mental health, but mental sickness. When it goes out and nothing is done, when it's coming back, it comes back with 7 wicked demons, with 7 wicked sicknesses. That is why for us as a church, number 1, we'll recommend prayer. As you pray, you are feeling yourself so that 7 other demons will not come in. Number 2, that is why we recommend deliverance. Number 3, that is why we recommend church services. As you come and you listen to the word of God, you are feeling yourself. As you wake up every morning and you have your quiet time and you read the word of God, you are feeling yourself. As you gather as a group, armor bearers, pillars of Christ, ushering department, Rosa choir, whatever group you belong to, ushers department, as you meet hospitality, medical team, as you meet on weekly basis, as you discuss the Bible, as you talk about social things happening on the social media, I am here to let you know that you are feeling yourself. Rise up, I will pray with you.